Welcome to the Oldish. A special welcome back to those who have been with us before. And to those of you who may be new with us, welcome. I hope you do stay with us and find this content interesting. Today on our Let's Talk About segment, we're going to talk about DNRs, so that's Do Not Resuscitate, and we're also going to look at paramedics and lift assist programs. But first, as always, let's take a look at the articles we published on theoldish.com this week. Let me just get rid of some of these things. There we go. Okay, so this week we published an article about a wearable device that can measure your steps and your gait and actually start making predictions about when and if you might fall. Now, why would you want to know that? Well, because when you take all of this information to your doctor could prescribe specific exercises to strengthen you and perhaps make sure that those falls don't happen, or maybe don't happen as often. So they use an accelerometer in all of this, the device data to record the patterns. So take a look at that article and see if you might be up for wearing a device that could help you fall less, or maybe not at all. Losing weight is something many of us strive for. I know I always do. It's like a constant chase, isn't it? But if you are an older woman and you're losing weight, that might be an indication of poorer health. So take a look at that article and see if maybe you fall into that category or someone you know. Don't be too quick to retire. We've talked about this before, but without the daily stimulation of work challenges, socialization, and routine, cognitive decline has been found to be speeded up. Now, this is an actual survey that's been done. That's not just talking about it. This is a study that has been done that does indeed show that cognitive decline speeds up when you don't have that stimulation. So don't be too quick. And before you retire, you might want to make sure that you've got some things to do to maintain your cognitive function. Earwax. Earwax. You've got earwax. Everybody has earwax, but you know what? If you have too much of it and it becomes impacted, that can lead to hearing loss, falls, and yes, cognitive decline. So don't get a Q-tip and start shoving it in further. Absolutely do not. Go and see your doctor. Make sure it is removed properly and that it's monitored. Because if you are somebody who tends to have a buildup of earwax, you want to make sure that on a regular basis you get that taken care of so that you're not subject to any of these other side effects that happen with too much earwax. As we start moving toward fall and we're all nesting, start thinking about those activities, those hobbies that you maybe left off in the spring, things that you want to start or pick up, things that you've talked with your friends about. It's time. You have to make sure you do it. Because guess what? Your cognitive abilities are going to be better when you deal with challenges like this. Hobbies, learning something new, use it or lose it. It's still true. It's always been true. Now, muscle loss we talked about with the wearable device, but it's something that does plague a lot of older people. And one of our more recent articles that was published just yesterday, I believe, talks about the fact that it is never too late to regain muscle that has been lost. So take a look at that. Doing exercises that are specific to building and retaining muscle, as well as exercises that are resistance training. Those things are very important for older adults. So make sure you take a look at those articles. Now, let's move into our Let's Talk About segment. This is a bit of a sad story, but I'm going to tell you this story so that it doesn't happen to you, or so that you can at least be aware. We talk a lot about advocacy here at the Oldish, and it's always important. It's always important for you to be aware of situations where advocacy is required, and better to do a little bit too much than a little bit too little. We've done a lot of articles and talked about communicating your wishes with regard to your health care, to your family, to your healthcare team, to as many people as you possibly can. We've talked about the articles that you need to have signed, that you need to do those while you are cognitively well, so that as your health declines, your wishes will be adhered to, because they won't let you sign legal documents if you're not cognitively well. So I have a friend who lives 2,500 miles away from her father, and I say miles because this is in the US. She lives 2,500 miles away from her father. He lives in an assisted living facility, and he recently took ill. In telephone conversations with his daughter, she suggested to him that if he continued to feel unwell, he should perhaps ask the facility to take him to the hospital and just get checked out. Eventually, they did just that. They took him to the hospital. Now, he had to wait for 6 hours to see a doctor, but when the doctor finally did see him, so I'm not positive of the timing around here. I know he had to wait 6 hours to see the doctor. I also know that at some point the father coded, and the healthcare team that was present intubated him and sedated him. Now, this man had signed a DNR. He had signed a DNR. His family was aware of it. The facility was aware of it because they had the DNR in his file. The doctor didn't see him for several hours after his admission to that hospital, so nobody knew. The DNR wasn't handed over. This becomes a very difficult situation because the family is now between the devil and the deep blue sea. Their father had been very specific about his wishes. His wishes were not being adhered to. Now, there is a business study that says that the point at which any process is most likely to break down is the point at which it's handed over to somebody else. That's true in life too. So the father signed the DNR. It was put in his file at the facility. The facility handed him over to the hospital, to the EMS, the ambulance, which then handed him over to the hospital. So he was handed off twice. The facility had 6 hours to make it right and to get the information to the hospital, and they did not. To be clear, my friend has no wish for her father to die. No wish at all. If his health is such that his life is in jeopardy, he has made his wishes known. And his family wants his wishes adhered to. And here they are, not being adhered to. As of this very moment, I don't know whether my friend's father is alive or not. I have no idea. But I do want to bring this up to you. Here is, we have Betty Corneal, who is talking to us. Betty, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it. So I just want to carry on with this. As I say, I don't pretend to know the full story, but I do know that an individual did what he was supposed to do. We know that the form was charted and is at the facility, and yet here we are. There's no easy answer for this, but I tell you this story because I want you to understand how important advocacy is. Without knowing what the situation is at this time, I feel that we need to demand more from our professionals. The man was in the hospital for several hours, 6 hours that we know of, before he coded. There was time. There was time for the facility to advocate on his behalf. The daughter advocated, by the way. The daughter was talking to the hospital. The hospital asked her if he had a DNR, and she said, yes, it's in his file at the facility. Now she's, of course, 2,500 miles away, so she's not able to get to him in a heartbeat, but she did indicate to the hospital that he had a DNR. Nobody at the hospital called the facility to have that DNR transferred over to them. Nobody at the facility took the time to look in the file and see if there was a DNR there or if there was any information that the hospital needed. Nobody did anything. Nobody advocated. They took him to the hospital and they thought that was enough. The hospital had the doctor look at him and they thought that was enough. He coded and they intubated him and they thought that was the right thing. In fairness, in the absence of any paperwork, life and death decisions are often made by healthcare professionals, and I certainly understand that they erred on the side of caution. But advocacy from several different perspectives would have helped this man, would have helped his wishes be respected. So don't ever be too shy. Don't ever fail to speak up. Don't ever fail to ask the questions. You can do it nicely. You know, do you have it? Are you sending it over? When are you sending it over? Have you sent it over? Do you have this at the hospital? Have you got it now? Want to make sure that all of his wishes are taken care of. Don't worry about sounding like you have evil wishes for this man. This is not it. He did everything he was supposed to do. And now he finds himself in a position where his wishes are not being respected. And that's got to be a tough pill to swallow for everybody, for him, for the family. I'm sure everybody feels bad. Advocacy is very important. Please take that time to advocate for those you love. Okay, we will move on. Are you aware of what a lift assist is? A lift assist is something that happens when somebody falls down and whoever may be there is unable to pick the person up. Sometimes nobody's there and the person can't get up. You know the old commercial, help, I've fallen and I can't get up? Well, a lift assist came and helped the Help I've Fallen woman get up. A professor, a health studies professor at Western University, whose name is Dr. Alexandra Zacevic, recently did a study, an analysis with 5 of her health studies students, and the results of this analysis were published in the journal called Pre-Hospital Emergency Care, which is a peer-reviewed journal. This is really interesting. This was done in London, Ontario, so a city, a small city, but I think you can take the numbers and imagine them being applied in whatever multiple is needed for whatever city you may live in. What they did was they looked at paramedics' notes at the number of times lift assists were called for. Now, what they did not do was take into consideration patients who were not injured and did not need to go to the hospital. They took those out of the equation. So this was a senior whose only pressing need was to be able to get up off the floor. Okay? Some of these people would apparently say, I don't have anybody else to call. I have nobody else to call, so I called paramedics. Some calls came from long-term care homes and facilities where they have do not lift policies. I don't know why they'd have a do not lift policy if they're dealing with older seniors, but perhaps it has to do with the safety of the staff. Perhaps they're not trained adequately, or whoever's on duty is not trained adequately. But they did look at all of these calls. Paramedics in 2015 in the London Middlesex area responded to 1,121 lift assist calls from seniors, from 611 individuals. So you already know that some people called more than once. 2/3 were single visits, but about 200 people needed lift assists multiple times during the year, including 4 who required between 16 and 20 visits. 4 people who fall down over and over and over again in the space of a year and need 16 to 20 visits. We're looking at once every 3 or 4 weeks here. That's a lot. So to be fair to the seniors who are scared when they fall down, they're calling the paramedics not because it's the best option, but because it's the only option that they have. Professor or Dr. Zacevic says it doesn't seem these different pockets of healthcare funding are talking to each other about how to streamline expenses. They don't talk about how to make this more efficient and less costly. That's an astonishing study. That's an astonishing number of people who couldn't get up. And incidentally, the calculation of the time paramedics spent on this equates to 33 24-hour days. So that's more than a month of 24-hour days paramedics spent lifting people up off the floor. So you know the muscle mass stories that we were talking about, that you need to build muscle mass so that you don't fall down to begin with? Do that. You should also have a plan for what happens if you fall down. Now I know circumstances alter cases, and not everybody is going to have their cell phone with them or their help I've fallen and I can't get up button. I get it. Advocate for yourself and make sure you have a plan. You can go to a physio or occupational therapist and learn how to roll. Now, this assumes you haven't broken anything and you can still move even if you're on the floor. But to roll, to get yourself into a position where you can stand up or get up on your hands and knees is so important. You have to learn how to look after yourself. If you are by yourself, I know there is such a desire on the part of every single person to age in place. But this is one of these things that you really have to give some consideration to. What if? And prepare for that. What if? I actually know of a woman, she wrote on our Facebook page at some point, and it was a while ago, that she does know how to do this and she practices regularly how to get up. The reality is that the longer you are on the floor and unable to get up, your chances are increasingly more likely that you will not survive. There was a story that I talked about here not too long ago about a woman who fell in a bathtub, and the only reason she survived was because she had water. That's not going to happen to all of us. So if you are somebody who lives alone, if you are somebody who feels a little weak from time to time, but primarily just if you're somebody who lives alone because stuff happens, please do take the initiative to advocate for yourself and learn how to rescue yourself if you fall down. I'm not saying the paramedics are not going to come. These paramedics have no thought of not coming. But the numbers are very startling. The number of people who fall down and need lift assists is very startling. Over a month's worth of 24-hour days, the paramedics spend in a small city simply picking people up. If we learn to do it for ourselves, perhaps we can help them out, but mostly we can help ourselves out. Okay, so I think we have an article that will be coming up on that subject in the next week or two. I've assigned it to our writer, so hopefully that will come out. But in the meanwhile, that is our Oldish Live show for today. Please do follow us on Facebook. Please do share the information with your friends. And if you are a lover of Instagram or Twitter or Google Plus or whatever platform makes you happy, please do find us there. Our handle is @TheOldish. Please do read our articles at theoldish.com. There's a new article published pretty much every day, 6 days a week. That's a lot. There's a lot of content there. I think we're over 1,300 articles. You can find anything and everything you want there related to aging, caregiving, long-term care, even death. We talk about everything. We don't shy away. So find us there, and do please join us next week for another edition of The Oldish Live. Until then, please remember that it does indeed take a village to age a senior.